Yeah, I'm just agreeing with Wes. It's easier to just do your
It's
PPT.
really hard to hear you, Joey.
Oh, how is that?
Getting better.
Hmm. All right, I'll try to keep it in mind then.
That's better.
Yep.
Yes. All right, thank you.
All right, so it is the top of the hour. I don't think we're going to have a gigantic contingent based on the doodle results, but thank you everybody for coming. We will remind you that even when we're dancing in between dance sessions, that the note well still applies. So please do. Everybody understands and read all that because you had to do it in order to use the data tracker. You had to log in with the data tracker. Therefore, you've read the note well. We will start off. So we decided to organize things where we were going to talk about the dance templates first with Molly because it seems like that was a good introduction to, I think, how the architectural document has been restructured. I will leave it to the proponents to talk about what they are looking out of the discussion today, but I think they've done a lot of good work in the architectural document and they're looking like for feedback. So with that, I'll turn it over to the proponents.
So, Michael, do you take that?
I take that. Are you gonna? You got the slides. Did you want me to
N-
talk to them? Is that what you're saying?
no, they wanted to start with the template backwards.
Yes. Okay. Sure. I can talk about the template.
Without consulting you
Um.
guys, if you think it's the wrong ordering, you are welcome to flip it. This is a more of a laid back working group session. So.
Um.
No, I
It's
think we can
it's
dance backwards. That's fine.
yeah. So let me see. Ask to share my screen. Because we didn't make slides. Someone in the chairs have to respond. There we go. Thank you. Um. Do do. Sorry, why isn't it showing me the choice I want? Um,
So
there we go.
while
That's the
Michael
choice.
is
Yeah, there we
trying
go.
to
All
sort
right.
that, okay.
Okay. So we have created a repo. It's called IETF Dancing Template. I suggest adopting it as a document as soon as it's a little bit better shape. But it's never intended to be published, and that's mostly, I would say, just to make it official that we are allowed to spend agenda time on it. So it's got the usual stuff in it. Let me see. Is this actually? I don't think it actually has anything in there. No. Okay. So right now, the instructions that are at the top about renaming the document, I left those there. And there's some text in here which is wrong. Okay. So the intention is that this would be an empty document and it would have only a set of um, a table of contents there. And I can give you an example of what we're talking about from
Are you
another
sharing
working
a
group.
screen? Okay, I don't see that. Okay,
You're not
I'll
seeing
fix
my,
that.
why don't you, maybe you need to
No,
click on
I'm
presentation
on the
view.
wrong. No, this is my problem. I'll go back.
Yeah, you're on the wrong tab.
Yep.
Um, so we created, um, move this to there. Yeah, so we created this template. I don't know, I think originally back in 2011 or 12 in the role working group. And so it had all these questions to be answered if you're going to use role for something. And as you see, most of those entries were empty with the idea that you were supposed to put some text here. This section should detail what's going on. So that was the idea. And that would, at least if you didn't have something to put there, then the answer was, why not? Right. Um, and and so this document got replicated I think 3 or 4 times. And in one case, we were unable to do it for one applicability area. And that actually was what created the 6-TISH working group, because we didn't have any answers. So we created a whole working group to answer the question. So that's the intention. And I need some help brainstorming, the questions that go into this part. I think it's stuff like, why would whose zone would it go into, if that makes sense? What would the TTL for that zone be? Would there be DNSSEC? And if not, why not? Other things would be, explain why normal. Why would you not just use a straight TLS certificate from a CA, and etc. So that's the intention.
Contents of certificates and
what goes in the certificate, what gets verified, if anything, maybe nothing.
And especially naming of DNS entries.
Yeah, and how do you name it? Yeah, those are all good questions. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing we're going to intend to put in here. And please go ahead, Rick.
What are you templating? Are you templating applications, or are you templating ways of identifying all sorts of users? What does the template capture?
No. Okay. Let's take a helicopter view. We have the architecture document, which is dancing in general, right? Yeah. And we have a couple of documents on secure dancing, that is the operations that we need to modify in the TLS handshake and so. And now we're down to specifying protocol specific dances, dancing with SIP, dancing with SMTP, dancing with OAuth.
Yeah.
So requirements on protocol implementations and documentation on the protocol. So the template needs to have requirements, what you need to document for a dance implementation.
Okay, so a template instance will be about SIP and another will be about HTTP, for example.
We'll use the template to create a document about the SIP implementation, and another on exactly.
Yeah, and Rick, I know you've had a lot of feedback on a lot of these things, so I'm really looking forward to your collaboration on getting the template right. And I actually think that we get the set of questions right, then in many cases the set of answers become obvious as we go, and the questions that are hard to answer may actually be the points of contention, where we actually do need a good answer and we do need to have a good conversation about that.
Okay, yeah, I offered to provide input, and I've been waiting because you said we first want to structure things. Apparently the point is now. I'll dive in. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. Are there any other questions about the template at this point?
Yeah, I got one high-level question for you guys. A lot of working groups have done templates that I've seen, mine probably being one of the ones that has published more RFCs than anything else. I believe some past specifications have put the template, in an RFC, often at the bottom in an appendix or something like that. Did you consider putting it at the bottom of the architecture? Why do you think it should be in an internet draft that is never published? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
So I think that when it comes to doing something like a MIME registration, which is really an activity that where you interact with Diana and then they take the results and stuff it in a database somewhere, then I think that we just said, put it at the bottom of the RFC, say, fill out this template, send it in, blah, 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 you're done. That's great. Okay. Or you put it as part of your existing RFC that explains other things. So I think that's a different kind of a template than I think we're after here. Whereas this is kind of, the idea is to make the different dancing documents similar, answer the same kind of questions, and get some kind of muscle memory, maybe is the right answer. Ideally the ISG will be like, oh, that's another one of these documents. Oh, okay. Well, I only cared about 0.4.7 in that template, which always bothered me. I'm going to go skip right to it And oh yeah, that's good. Well done this time. Great. And so that's, I think, part of the thing. And the role, actually, we sent some of the template out actually for review. We got some weird reviews back because people didn't understand it was a template. So we had to start over again. But the idea was, if you were doing a security review of this document, what questions would you be asking? And are the questions in this document the questions you would be asking, or have we missed some? And that was the idea of, kind of preloading that review part, so that we would know whether we're going to pass the security review, because they've already told us what was going to matter or not. Or a transport review, or a DNS op review in this case. Okay, so I'm going to step off the stage then.
Okay, so we'll be done with step 1 of the moonwalk, dancing backwards, and shift to the architecture document, I think is what you're saying.
So what's the conclusion here? I mean, Wes, you asked a question. I still think that
I would love to see
Michael's idea of publishing this as a draft wouldn't stop the process on getting architecture out, but having it as an attachment to the architecture would possibly block architecture.
Well, I don't know that it would block it, but so that's up to the working group. We're proposing it as a question. I think that the working group needs to specifically answer. I'm fine doing it either way. I actually wonder, having just reviewed a JMap document for sector, it was definitely a predefined kind of structure, but I don't think that they have a template. I think they just keep copying other stuff. Shuma.
Yeah, so if I can express my preference, I think it needs to be published somewhere, right? So it can't just exist as a draft that expires and disappears somewhere. So either as an appendix to the architecture, or publish the templates draft separately.
Why, if the goal is to produce a bunch of RFCs, why does the template have to get published?
So that individual application protocol developers can use something to write their RFC on, right?
But
otherwise, how would they know what questions they need to?
I think that will be very confusing because it's going to just be a table of contents.
Okay, so Michael, if I'm a new application protocol designer and I want to incorporate dance, then
yes,
how would I know what set of architectural questions I need to answer? Do I just look at an example of a previous RFC and then just copy that and use that as a template?
You could do that. Assuming that we're going to publish a few of these, then you could do that. You could use it, look at the SMTP one or whatever. But when it came to actually writing it, you could just go and clone the repo that we've created and start from there. And I mean, internet drafts have a Git bit more longevity.
Okay, so got it. So you're proposing, Michael, that there is a Git repo that will always exist that you can clone to bootstrap your new application specific document.
And if in the worst case, you'll have to go back through. You might, GitHub explodes and no one has a copy, and we're living on Mars. Then you could go back and through the Internet Archives drafts archives and find them, or as you say, we could just take some existing published RFC and remove all the text from it and just have the headings, right? And then you'd have
I assume the template will have instructions to the authors that won't be in published RFCs.
Yes, that's the goal, is that we would ask the questions, and if there's details beyond the subject heading, then we would want to put something there.
All right, well, I think good. But then I guess a question from a different perspective would be like, what would be the downsides of publishing it then?
The downside is that we would have a very strange conversation with the IESG about why we're publishing an empty document and wasting their time. And some people say that an RFC costs about $50,000 to publish. And why are we wasting all those resources?
And then we're back to Wes' proposal to have it as an attachment. I think that's a matter of timing. I propose that we postpone that decision for now, because if the requirements document is in a publishing state by the time we have architecture in a publishing state, then we may as well append it as an appendix and point to the GitHub repo for the latest version. But if I don't want to delay dance architecture because of this. Personally.
I'm okay with that. If that's how it happens, then I'm okay. But I also agree I don't want to delay it.
Yeah, I suspect that so my view is I can't imagine the template will take that long. So the timing should probably work out. I think that's a reasonable path forward. We don't need to make the decision today.
Also, apparently, it's not required. It's not a set of strong requirements, so there's no strict requirement for publishing it, so that you can point to it. So yeah, if it's possible, good, and otherwise, well, not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was Schumann's point of it should be published somewhere. If we expect people to follow it, right, in order to publish something, and we want a standard look, even if it doesn't need a normative reference to point to that template architecture, you do want it findable. And the downside of an internet draft is, they do go to expired, and which is to be expected. But we need some way to say this is what you should use when publishing a new.
Yeah, that's one reason I suggest adopting it as a working group document, even though we don't intend to publish it, so that it's more easily findable, as this is the right thing to do. Also, the working group chairs can fire the authors of the template and assign new ones and whatever.
Clever.
See, Ole, I'm trying to get us fired. That's really what I want.
Oh, that was the secret plan, Michael.
The secret plan is someone else will do it. Yeah.
Do we have any agreement here? I think we have that we postponed the decision. We have two ways forward on how to handle the template. I will come back later to it.
Go ahead and do that. I don't think anybody's objecting to that. And that sounds like.
Okay, then. Let's move on to architecture. I mean, currently, we have 3 workgroup documents. We have the architecture, and we have last call on 2 of the TLS related documents. I'm going to focus on architecture. And Michael and I have been working a lot, and Schumann have participated now and then with architecture documents. So we think we moved it to a much better state than in London. One thing is that while Ash started working on this, he collected all possible examples of protocol usages he could find and just added it in there in order to gain attraction. And luckily, there are a lot of use cases for dance, but the architecture document won't be an inventory list or a master list of all the use cases. We want to focus on use cases that are interesting because they have different usages of dance, maybe different naming spaces, different ways of setting up communication, and so on. And I would like you all to consider this as we discuss, that we're not trying to cover all use cases. That will be in the documents on how to dance that we discussed just a few minutes ago using the template. We have a couple of issues that Michael and I suggest that we move out of architecture and say that if anyone wants to write on how to dance for these, that's fine, but we don't want as authors to spend any more time writing text on these. I think they're part of the rest here. So issue number six in the GitHub issue tracker is auth2. We're not sure if this is a use case that requires special attention and should be included in architecture. What do you say?
Who was the opponent of the OAuth use case? Was that Ash as well? And do we remember any specific details around that?
No, I don't remember any. I don't know where it came from. No, I don't.
OAuth 2 would involve client names, right? The direction I want to go as well. And the architecture document at this point is very strict about DNS names, which does not involve a client identity.
Mm-hmm.
I will be reading the document with this in mind, so there might be points coming up that also make sense for OAuth 2. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But currently, no one seems to be right now stepping forward and saying anything else here.
I would suggest for these items that you're bringing forward of, wanting to remove, is that you need to specifically look for volunteers that believe it should stay in the document and are willing to write text. And if you don't get any, then we remove it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like we have a volunteer, Rick, to look at that use case, right? So I would suggest Rick review and tell us if it should stay or not and why.
I mean, we'll keep the issue in the tracker, and if Rick returns with some ideas on text, then we're good.
Yeah, although I won't look specifically at OAuth 2 then, but just the general client domain name situation. So it's not as specific as this point says.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. If it turns out to be different from the rest, yes.
Good.
So OAuth 2, I don't hear anyone stepping forward saying, yay, that's a very special use case and it's going to change dancing forever. So it doesn't mean that it will be excluded from dance for all time. If someone used the template and writes to OAuth 2, that's fine. But it's a matter of not blocking architecture. Number 7, DNS over TLS authentication. Is this a use case that's different from any other use cases we have?
I think it depends on what you mean here. Are you talking about TLS client authentication for DNS over TLS, or
it's client authentication dance?
Yeah, right. So I think I see. Woody is here. Hey, Bill Woodcock is here. I think he had proposed a use case for doing Dane client authentication for DNS privacy. I don't know if that's still a use case that is being contemplated, but that may be why it's there. I don't know if Bill wants to say something about this.
I think the other question is it unique compared to other uses?
I don't see Bill speaking. I was going to call him out too if nobody else did. Can you go over, and sorry, I was telling Joey in my side chat that I am sleepy. I didn't sleep well last night. And why does it matter so much if it's unique compared to other use cases? How does that affect whether it goes into the architecture document or not?
Well, architecture should cover the usages we have now and give examples. But for instance, I mean, SIP client authentication is very similar to SMTP or anyone else. It's an email address, style address. So we don't have to cover all of those email address. If we cover one, we're good enough for the rest. But if this is using a very special identity in the client certificate that should have a very special, strange DNS record that you find by using a chain of SRV records and NATR records for some reason, then it's a very different use case for architecture.
Yeah, so in that case, it might be worth mentioning, highlighting that difference in the architecture, but the specific details, wouldn't they be punted to a separate application-specific document that follows the template and produces its own document?
Okay. My proposal in the ticket is that we'll mention this as a future use case and just keep the ticket in the backlog for future work.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, then. I'll make a note here. Fine. Next, StartTLS SMTP. It's mentioned in the text.
Yeah.
Is there
So,
anyone wanting to write something? Is it?
yes, there are people who want to write. So is Victor Duchovny with us today? He has told me that he's definitely going to implement the dance client authentication piece in SMTP transport. So he is the original proponent of that, and it is a valid use case. The question is, again, does it need to be specifically mentioned in the ARC document, or is this a detail in a separate document?
Yeah, in the ticket, I propose a text along the lines of, quote, SMTP services, both server to server using SMTP and client to server using submission, can benefit from dance client authentication, dot. Is that enough?
I think that sounds reasonable to me.
To me as well. I was also wondering if this will be a use case for the client, and indeed, especially for submission. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think
I based that on your text there, Rick. You listened to use cases, MTA to MTA and client to MTA. So I just made a more simple sentence of it, what you wrote.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to me. Thanks.
Okay. Then we had something, I don't even know what XARF is, but I quoted a text that is in the draft at this point in ticket number 14. Where did this come from? And Michael, you had some comments here in the tracker saying MUD situation is similar to ticket 13 in that the key signs, which is Jose Cose object security, in that the key signs a MUD file may need to retrieved from DNS. There's something wrong in this sentence.
Yeah. Maybe there's a typo in the sentence, but the idea is that when you're validating a MUD file, you might need to know how to get the key that was used to sign it. MUD doesn't really have a way of saying that. And so that actually might be a situation where, yeah, there's some magic record, an SRV, something else that tells you how to find it based upon the URL that you're looking at. We would do then. That would go, I think that goes somehow, that's a dancing document. But I think that the important thing from the architecture point of view is that it's It's not a TLS use. And so it has a different behavior. I don't know anything about XARF, so I don't even know what it is.
In the bug tracker, we assigned this to Ash in December 19th, and he haven't reacted to GitHub mails, so I assume he's not interested.
What I quickly found is it's a standard way of reporting abuse reports, and XARF is a transport for it.
Yep. But it doesn't sound like this is something that should block publication, and we haven't got any authors stepping forward. So
yeah. Also, it's not Dane, is it? It's not TLS, therefore it's not Dane.
No, it's document signing, but yeah. You have a point there. So my proposal is that we remove this text and keep it some sort of backlog ticket for future work, but we remove the text from the draft.
Yeah, it seems like there's consensus around that. I was just thinking it probably would be good maybe in the architecture document repo or a brand new repo to create a future items list where you can at least document where these were and point to the issue if it's closed.
We label them as future work in the issue tracker for architecture right now.
Okay.
So we can possibly do that later. Okay. And then terminology. We have some in the document, but the question is, do we need more? There was a document there about we could point to somewhere. What was the normal process here for filling in terminology? Do we need a group of people reading and asking for explanation of terms?
I think the normal procedure, I mean, some protocols, including DNS, right, have now published, I think, 3 terminology RFCs entirely separate. I don't think you guys need that, right?
No.
You need to define the terminology that might be unique to talking about Dane and dancing in the architecture document. I suspect it's a few things, and I don't think it needs to be updated very much. So
I think that more applies to the other documents. The two in the where we add stuff to the TLS protocol, and we can make sure that we're coordinated with those two and have the same terminology. But otherwise, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, agreed. I think for an architecture document, it would be good to pull in all terminology from the other documents at that point, and as well as anybody reviewing it saying, I didn't understand this section. What do you mean by this word? Because we didn't realize it should be in the terminology. Then you can add it.
So unless Shimon violently starts screaming, I'll steal from those two documents and include.
No screaming, Ole. Go for it.
Thank you. So I'm making a note to make sure architecture has all the terminology definitions from the other working group documents on that ticket. And that's a starting point. Then we'll see in the reviews and in the process if we need to add anything else. We're making great progress here. I think that was all on architecture, and then I just had a template and we discussed that. And we're gonna start mailing out to people to help us write those. And then I had the same picture as in London. Time to code. Yay. I think that's it. So good progress. But Rick, you have some reading to do and come back to us. But
Yep.
other than that, I think we have the feedback we need to update architecture document and publish a new version.
Okay, I'm glad you guys have the feedback that you have been looking for. With that, is there anybody else that wants to bring up other things related to dancing at all? All right, hearing none. Joey and I did request a dance session for IETF-116, and we will, we requested 1 hour. I suspect, given the fact that we just burnt 35 minutes, 1 hour in 116 should be fine, although with a bigger audience, we will get more comments, hopefully. If, you know, we should also start putting an agenda together for that as well. Thank you to Joey for putting the one together for today. And so please do let us know, especially as that time gets closer, what you want time-wise and, you know, to talk about wise. I assume the architecture document will be out there.
Yeah, for example, an update from Rick.
Update from Rick, and hopefully we can have a lot of progress on the requirements template. And if I look in my crystal ball and my wish list, maybe at least starting point of an implementation document based on the template. We have LoRaWAN, where we have a lot of text that we removed from architecture, but I think fits nicely into a template. But we also have RIC and SMTP and some other protocols waiting.
Yeah, and also hopefully some feedback on the templates. Yeah, I think you just mentioned that, right? But yes.
Yep. That would be very nice. And if we can, around that time, have architecture in a state so we can issue a working group last call, would be nice to have all documents progressing.
Agreed. I would argue that because there will be a lot more people in the room, that you should expect to do another introduction of what the template document is and, you know, what its purpose is, because not everybody will have attended this meeting.
Yeah, Michael is preparing a song and dance that will introduce this metaphysically.
Of course he is. Sounds perfect.
No reaction.
Yeah, make sure the meeting note taker records that precisely.
Get with behind my mute. There we go. Yes, I'm doing that.
Yeah, remember your dancing trousers in London, so yeah.
The note taker has written down that Michael will dance publicly.
The London meeting was over. We've been dancing in a pub and we had a great night. And I shouldn't dance during the IETF.
I say when this working group closes, we hold a karaoke party. That's probably the right thing to do.
That's also good. I also like singing.
All right.
That sounds like a promise, Wes.
I've never done karaoke before. That would be a scary promise. Okay, so I think we are going to conclude unless anybody has last minute topics to bring up. Joey, you have?
Nope, just to thank everybody for joining us today, and looking forward to meeting with all of you at the next session.
Thank you to the chairs for organizing this.
Pushed us into it, so thank you. All right, thanks everybody. We'll close out the session then.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Bye.
Bye.